In recent days, political tension between Canada and the United States has noticeably eased following the 30-day pause on tariffs. Canadian political parties have shifted their focus toward lobbying efforts and expanding their global ties, broadening trade relationships with the European Union and Eastern partners. This calmer political climate is what we've detailed in our latest videos. However, another side of the trade dispute is unfolding on the ground among Canadian citizens, a dynamic that has received far less attention in the global media. Recent reports indicate that grassroots actions, ranging from widespread opposition to any notion of annexation to campaigns urging Canadians to buy domestically and even cancel travel to the US, are gaining momentum. These consumer-driven responses could have a significant impact on the US economy, regardless of whether the tariff issues are ultimately resolved in the coming weeks. The concern deepens when considering that if this sentiment escalates further, spurring boycotts of additional American products, such as cars, electronics, and other consumer goods, the economic fallout could extend well beyond the immediate effects of the tariff pause. Before we dive deeper into these emerging trends, let's first take a look back at the origins of this issue and how it has evolved over time. Since the start of his second term, President Trump has repeatedly targeted Canada with a mix of tariff threats and provocative rhetoric that goes beyond trade disputes. His comments, shared on social media platforms such as Truth Social and echoed during public events, have reignited long-standing debates about US-Canada relations. Critics argue that Trump's language aims to pressure Canada economically by suggesting that if the nation can't stand on its own, it might as well be absorbed into the United States as the 51st state. Trump has frequently floated the idea that Canada would be better off joining the United States. For example, in a widely reported Truth Social post, he said, "I'll be calling our great American hockey team this morning to spur them on toward victory tonight against Canada, which with far lower taxes and much stronger security, will someday, maybe soon, become our cherished and very important 51st state." He has also derisively addressed Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau by calling him Governor Trudeau, a term meant to imply that Trudeau is more akin to a state governor than the leader of an independent nation. In one instance, following a tense meeting at Mar-a-Lago, Trump retorted that if Canada couldn't survive without US support, perhaps it should just become a US state. Trump's threats have not been limited to rhetorical jabs. He has repeatedly warned that unless Canada changes its policies, his administration will impose steep tariffs on Canadian goods. In a press conference early in his term, he justified these threats by citing issues such as illegal immigration and the flow of fentanyl into the United States. One of his key messages was, if Canada doesn't take responsibility for its role in the flow of drugs and illegal aliens, then we have no choice but to use economic force. Maybe Canada should just join the United States. These comments have been part of a broader strategy to pressure Canada into what Trump has described as making us the 51st state, suggesting that economic pressures in the form of tariffs could force the issue. Recent evidence indicates that not only have Canadian politicians and government officials reacted strongly to President Trump's provocative comments, but a broad spectrum of Canadian society has also mobilized against any notion of merging with the United States. For example, multiple surveys reveal that a vast majority of Canadians reject the idea of becoming the 51st US state. A YouGov poll found that around 82% of Canadians oppose any merger with the United States, reflecting a deeply held belief in the country's independent identity. Another Leger poll reported similar figures, underscoring widespread national pride and skepticism toward Trump's proposals. Studies have shown that opposition is even stronger among certain demographics, with women and older Canadians being particularly resistant to the idea. This nuanced data suggests that the sentiment is both deeply rooted in Canadian history and reinforced by contemporary political and cultural values. Economic and consumer responses. Reports by Reuters and the Associated Press highlight that the economic fallout from Trump's 25% tariffs has directly affected daily life. Many Canadians are now cancelling trips to the US and boycotting American products. For instance, there have been widespread cancellations of vacations to popular US destinations and notable boycotts of American-made liquor, as seen in Ontario, where provincial authorities have removed US brands from store shelves. Buy Canadian campaigns. The economic countermeasures have spurred surge in patriotic consumer campaigns, viral social media, hashtags such as Dogsha Boycott, and the slogan, Canada is not for sale, have emerged, encouraging consumers to support domestic products. Retailers report a noticeable shift, with increased sales of Canadian-made goods, reflecting a collective effort to insulate the economy from foreign tariffs and retaliatory measures. Political and diplomatic reactions. On the political front, leaders have been unequivocal in their rejection of Trump's ideas. Outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, in several speeches, has emphasized that Canada's rich natural resources, robust democratic institutions, and unique cultural identity are non-negotiable. Trudeau's televised address and subsequent statements have highlighted the economic risks that American tariffs pose, not only for Canadians, but also for American workers, noting that higher tariffs on Canadian exports could potentially shut down American manufacturing plants. Criticism from former officials. Prominent figures like Chrystia Freeland have condemned Trump's tariff threats as economic warfare. Freeland warned that such measures would harm American jobs and raise consumer prices in the US. Describing the tariffs as self-harming, she argued that these policies represent a direct attack on Canadian sovereignty, a cornerstone of the country's national identity. Despite the tensions, efforts are also being made to remind both nations of their long-shared history. Trudeau invoked historical moments, such as fighting side by side during global conflicts, to emphasize that while Canada and the United States are deeply interdependent, Canada remains resolutely independent. He called on Americans to recognize that free trade and strong border security can exist without compromising Canada's sovereignty. Symbolic response to Trump's comments. The reaction to Trump's statements has also taken on a symbolic dimension. During the 60th anniversary of the Canadian flag, citizens across the country proudly displayed the maple leaf on homes, vehicles, and at public events. This surge in patriotic expression, reported by sources such as the Associated Press, serves as a powerful visual counter-narrative to Trump's rhetoric. These displays are not only a rejection of the idea of annexation, but also an affirmation of Canada's unique identity. Merchandising and social media movements. The Canada is not for sale campaign has gone viral, with businesses launching merchandise that capitalizes on this sentiment. Caps, T-shirts, and other memorabilia have become symbols of national defiance, reinforcing the message that Canadians are united against external pressure to cede their sovereignty. Shifts in travel behaviour. One of the most striking manifestations of Canada's response to US tariff threats has been a shift in travel behaviour. Many Canadians, who once avidly planned vacations to American cities and resorts, are now cancelling these trips altogether. Instead, they are opting for alternative destinations, whether domestic retreats or trips abroad that do not require crossing the US border. This mass cancellation is not merely a matter of personal inconvenience. It is having profound economic repercussions. Recent data from the US Travel Association estimates that a sustained reduction in Canadian tourism could lead to losses of up to $2.1 billion in visitor spending and the loss of approximately 14,000 jobs in the United States. These figures highlight the crucial role that Canadian travellers have long played in supporting American tourism-dependent communities. Popular destinations like Florida, which traditionally welcome between 1.3 and 1.5 million Canadian visitors annually, are now bracing for a significant shortfall in revenue, a downturn that could affect everything from local retail to hospitality services. Impact on the travel industry. The impact is being felt across the travel industry. Major Canadian airlines are reporting a noticeable drop in demand for US-bound flights. For example, WestJet has documented an approximate 25% decline in bookings to the United States in recent weeks, prompting the airline to re-evaluate its flight schedules and routes. Air Canada, while not yet confirming a reduction, has acknowledged the uncertain environment and is closely monitoring passenger trends. These adjustments in flight operations are only one part of a broader ripple effect. As fewer Canadians cross the border, local economies on both sides are experiencing the consequences. American businesses that rely on Canadian spending are witnessing shrinking revenues, while Canadian service providers are gradually shifting their focus to local tourism markets. The trend extends beyond leisure educational travel, including school trips and excursions that have traditionally involved visits to cultural and historical sites in the United States, is also being reconsidered. In Quebec, school authorities have proactively advised parents and students to rethink their travel plans due to political and economic tensions. Quebec's Education Minister, Bernard Drainville, for example, urged 10th graders to reconsider their annual trips to New York City, a decision echoed by several school districts in Quebec and Manitoba. In one notable case, a high school in Granby cancelled planned trips to New York and Boston, with administrators emphasizing that the decision was not only about ensuring student safety, but also about sending a clear message of resistance to policies deemed economically harmful. This shift away from US destinations by educational institutions reflects a broader national sentiment. For many Canadians, cancelling trips or redirecting them to domestic locations, such as choosing excursions to Toronto instead of New York City, is both a practical and symbolic gesture. It represents a conscious effort to reduce dependency on a neighbour whose recent actions have been perceived as a threat to Canadian economic sovereignty. This sentiment has been reinforced by a wave of patriotic fervour, with surveys indicating that a significant majority of Canadians now prefer to buy local products and support domestic tourism over engaging with US markets. Now, let's explore the evolving trade relationship between Canada and the United States. Over the years, the economic relationship between the US and Canada has been one of the world's most significant and mutually beneficial trade partnerships. The two nations, sharing the longest international land border, have an interconnected economy built on a strong trade framework. In 2024, the total exchange of goods and services between them reached approximately $1.2 trillion, according to data from the Office of the United States Trade Representative. U.S. exports to Canada totaled $349.58 billion, resulting in a goods trade deficit of $63.3 billion for the United States, a gap largely driven by essential energy imports. Canada is not only the largest export destination for the United States, accounting for nearly 18% of its global exports, but it also absorbs about 75% of Canada's exports, highlighting the deep economic integration between the two countries. This integration has been further solidified by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, which replaced NAFTA in 2020. The new agreement has streamlined trade operations, provided enhanced protections for key industries like automotive, manufacturing and dairy, and strengthened energy trade regulations. More than 2 million US jobs depend directly on trade with Canada, underscoring the partnership's critical role in American economic stability. The trade relationship spans various industries, including energy, automotive, agriculture, metals, machinery, and technology. In the energy sector, Canada serves as the primary source of crude oil, natural gas, and electricity for the United States, with Canadian energy exports valued at around $180 billion in 2024, nearly 44% of total U.S. energy imports. Over half of all crude oil imported by the United States comes from Canada, and U.S. refineries, particularly in the Midwest, are specifically designed to process Canadian heavy crude. Canada also ranks as the top supplier of electricity, supporting cross-border power flows to states such as New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. Any significant disruption in this energy trade could lead to severe shortages and price hikes, potentially increasing gasoline costs by up to 30% and triggering economic instability in the region. In the automotive sector, the two countries function almost as a single manufacturing entity. More than 75% of vehicles produced in Canada are exported to the United States, while about 60% of US-made auto parts are sent to Canadian facilities for final assembly. Auto components often cross the border multiple times before a vehicle is fully assembled, with the Detroit-Windsor corridor being one of the busiest in the world, moving over 2.3 million vehicles annually. Major automakers such as Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis rely on production facilities in both nations. Any disruption, whether through tariffs or border restrictions, could significantly increase production costs and vehicle prices. Canada also supplies a substantial share of the raw materials essential to U.S. manufacturing, including aluminum, steel, rare earth elements, copper, and nickel.